The world tells you that love is something that happens to you, a force outside your control. You're told to be vulnerable, to give yourself to someone else, to lose yourself in them. But what if I told you that the power to make someone fall in love with you, and then walk away without them ever knowing it was part of your strategy, is within your grasp? What if love wasn't something you fall into, but something you could command? Machiavelli, the ruthless political mastermind, didn't leave anything to chance. He didn't wait for love or loyalty to be freely given. No, he took it. He engineered it. And in doing so, he conquered the greatest empires of his time. You may not be a prince or a general, but the strategies he mastered are just as applicable in today's world. In fact, they're more relevant than ever. You see, conventional wisdom, the idea that love is spontaneous, is nothing but a trap. It's an illusion. Those who follow the crowd, who fall in love, are pawns in a much larger game. What we're talking about here isn't just a simple romance. It's strategy. It's the art of war in human relationships. And today, you'll learn how to deploy it. Are you ready to become the master of your own romantic battlefield? I'll be honest with you. There was a time in my life when I didn't understand the true nature of relationships. I believed in the fairy tale, the idea that love was something pure, something destined. I thought I could win people over by being myself, by giving them everything I had. I was wrong. I remember one particular relationship where I thought I had found something real. I was emotionally invested, open, honest, vulnerable. I gave everything I had. Yet, as the relationship went on, I found myself giving more and more, while the other person remained emotionally distant. It felt like I was playing a game where I had no idea of the rules. That's when I realized I wasn't playing to win. I was playing to lose. The whole time, I was giving away power. It was only when I took a step back, detached emotionally, and studied the dynamics of the relationship from a strategic standpoint that I began to understand what was really happening. I wasn't just losing love, I was being manipulated. And the worst part? I didn't even see it coming. It took me years of reflection, trial, and error to develop the philosophy I'm going to share with you today. The philosophy of Machiavellian self-mastery. I didn't just want to make someone fall in love with me. I wanted to master the entire process. I wanted control over my own emotional fate. And that's what I'm going to show you how to achieve. Let's take a step back and look at history. Let's talk about Caesar. Julius Caesar. The man who, at the height of his power, could make nations bow at his feet with a single command. How did he do it? Was it his charisma alone? His military genius? Part of it, yes. But the true magic of Caesar's power lay in his ability to control relationships. One of the most remarkable examples of this was his relationship with Cleopatra. While most people believe that it was love that united them, the truth is much darker and much more strategic. Caesar didn't just fall for Cleopatra. He recognized her power, her potential as an ally. He used their relationship not just to gain political leverage in Egypt, but to further his own empire's interests. He made her fall in love with him, then left her to pursue greater conquest in Rome, all while keeping her as a tool in his political arsenal. This is the essence of Machiavellian thinking. Never get emotionally entangled to the point of losing your power. Love isn't a weakness unless you allow it to be. Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor, also understood this principle. He used his relationships to strengthen his grip on Europe, never allowing personal emotions to interfere with his strategic objectives. His love life wasn't about passion. It was about control. In the case of his marriage to Josephine, for instance, he recognized her status and power, but never allowed her to hold more influence over him than necessary. When he no longer saw any strategic benefit to the marriage, he cast her aside. Machiavelli himself wrote extensively about how rulers should treat relationships. "The prince," he wrote, "must be both a lion and a fox. The lion represents strength and courage, while the fox symbolizes cunning and strategy. A true master of relationships knows when to embrace both, to be charming and strategic, to manipulate emotions for power without being manipulated in return." This brings us to the heart of what we're going to uncover in this series. How do you, a modern-day strategist, apply Machiavelli's timeless principles to your own relationships? How do you make a player fall in love with you and then walk away, victorious and unscathed? I'll warn you now, it won't be easy. It won't be a fairy tale. But the rewards? They're worth it. While others hesitate, thinking that love must be pure and uncalculated, you will arm yourself with the ultimate weapon: strategy. You will learn to read the emotional battlefield, manipulate perceptions, and wield power in relationships like a true tactician. The first step is simple, though not easy. Detach emotionally. This doesn't mean becoming cold or heartless. It means understanding that you are always in control of your emotions. Don't let anyone take that from you. You must create an illusion of emotional investment while never truly allowing someone to have your heart. Your emotions are your most potent weapon, and if you hand them over too freely, you surrender control. And the second step: always be 2 steps ahead. While others are reacting to the tides of their emotions, you must act with foresight. Predict how the player will react, predict their next move, and stay in control. These are just the first steps. The real work begins when you start mastering the more subtle aspects of human nature, the psychological games and tactics that separate the amateur from the expert. So let me ask you, are you willing to detach yourself from conventional thinking and embrace the principles of power and control? Are you the type of person who wants to be swept off your feet by love? Or are you ready to wield it like a weapon? If you're not ready to take charge of your emotional destiny, this journey will not be for you. But if you are, then prepare yourself for a new way of thinking, one that will give you a powerful edge over anyone who plays by the traditional rules. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into Machiavelli's framework and philosophy. I'll show you how he applied these strategies to actual rulers and how you can use them to dominate the emotional landscape around you. Prepare to enter the mind of a master strategist, someone who never plays by the rules. Because as we speak, the battlefield of love is already being fought around you. Machiavelli understood the nature of power and control in relationships like no other. To him, emotions weren't something to be left to chance. They were tools, weapons to be used strategically. The modern world might call it manipulation, but in the world of the greats, it's simply called strategy. Love, affection, loyalty. These are just currencies in the game of human interaction, and like any currency, they must be earned, controlled, and spent wisely. You might be thinking, but isn't love supposed to be pure? Shouldn't it come naturally? That's the naive view. The world of relationships is a battlefield, and if you go in expecting fairy tale outcomes, you'll be crushed by the reality of what's at stake. The true lesson is not to fall in love, but to control love, to make it work for you. The key to power in any relationship isn't to give yourself away. It's to hold something back. Take a moment and think about the greatest conquerors in history. Did Caesar's heart ever truly belong to anyone but himself? Did Napoleon surrender his loyalty and commitment just because someone gave him affection? Number. They used relationships as strategic tools. They manipulated emotions, leveraged their charisma, and controlled the perception of others. They understood that the heart can be as easily governed as the throne. Let's bring this down to a personal level. Think about the most successful relationships you've observed. What did they all have in common? Power, influence, control. While most people believe that the secret to making someone fall in love is through generosity or vulnerability, the truth is far more tactical. The greatest players in any game are the ones who keep their cards close to their chest, who never reveal their true hand. This is what makes the idea of falling in love so dangerous. When you fall, you lose control. You surrender the power in the relationship. That is the opposite of what the master strategist does. The Machiavellian approach is simple. You draw the other person in, make them emotionally invested, but you never let them take hold of you. You always retain control. Let's look at an example. Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the greatest strategists in history, was a man who understood the importance of perception. His relationship with Josephine was never about passion. It was about power. She was the empress, a symbol of his success and status. The affection he showed her was calculated. But when their relationship became less useful to him, when it no longer served his grand strategy, Napoleon cast her aside. This wasn't cruelty. It was cold, calculated pragmatism. Napoleon didn't view love as something to be blindly given. It was something to be strategically applied and discarded when it no longer served his empire. Machiavelli himself, in his treatise The Prince, speaks about the importance of appearances and controlling the perceptions of others.
He writes that a ruler must appear generous, loyal, and trustworthy, but must also remain ready to cast aside such appearances when they no longer serve their purpose. The greatest conquerors, in love or in battle, were never slaves to emotions. They were masters of them, and this is your first lesson in applying Machiavellian strategy to relationships. You've heard the phrase, never let them see you sweat, right? Well, that's the first step to making a player fall in love, and then walking away. The more you act like you have everything under control, the more they'll want to be part of that power. People are drawn to those who appear self-sufficient, confident, and untouchable. Why? Because at a psychological level, we're all looking for someone who has control over their own life, someone who doesn't need anyone else to be complete. So here's the practical application. Start with holding, not affection, but access, not attention, but vulnerability. Don't let them feel like they have a foothold. Be unpredictable, be a mystery. When they start to wonder what you're thinking, when they're trying to figure out what makes you tick, that's when they'll start to fall for you. They'll project their own fantasies onto you because they'll never truly know you. That's the kind of power you want to wield. And remember, this is not about being dishonest. It's about creating an illusion of openness without giving up the core of who you are. You show them enough to keep them intrigued, but never enough to let them get too close. This dynamic creates the kind of emotional dependence in them that you want. And from there, you control the terms. So let me ask you, do you have the courage to hold back, to not reveal all of yourself, even when it feels like you might be losing them? Most people fail in relationships because they give everything too soon. But if you're willing to make them earn your emotional investment, you will stand apart from everyone else they've ever encountered. You'll be a force they can't resist, but one they can never fully possess. In the next section, we'll take this one step further. We'll examine how to manipulate emotional dependencies to your advantage and explore how you can make them feel like they're in love with you, without you ever having to sacrifice anything of your own. The game is about to get much more sophisticated, and it's about to get real. The question is, are you ready? Now you may be wondering, how do we move beyond simply keeping control and playing the game? The next step isn't about withholding affection or creating emotional intrigue. It's about building the perfect psychological landscape, one where the other person is primed to fall for you, completely, but at the same time, unknowingly playing into your hands. This is the true brilliance of Machiavelli's philosophy. It's not just about playing defense, it's about controlling the offensive. You see, in the world of relationships, the most powerful players understand the subtle art of emotional manipulation. The greatest minds of history, from Caesar to Napoleon, understood that in relationships, perception is reality. This is a battlefield where emotions are the terrain, and you can either dominate it or be crushed by it. Your objective is not to let emotions run wild, but to channel them like a general directing their army. The truth is, emotions are not something to fear. They're tools. You manipulate these tools not through brute force, but through the strategic planting of ideas, creating attachments, and controlling the narrative. Consider Napoleon's rise to power. Napoleon wasn't a man of overwhelming physical charisma, but what he had was the ability to read people, to understand what made them tick, and to use that knowledge to his advantage. His ability to shape public perception was unparalleled. He made people believe he was invincible, not by being invincible, but by convincing them of it. In relationships, the same principle applies. You don't need to be emotionally available all the time, but you must ensure that the other person believes that they are the center of your emotional world. It's not about saying the right words or following some script. It's about crafting an image, a vision that they can buy into. This is where the true Machiavellian tactician steps in. They plant seeds. They create psychological bonds through actions, words, and timing, manipulating situations to make their target feel special, while all the while they are holding the reins tightly in their own hands. Think of it as being a puppeteer. The other person may not know that they are being moved, but they'll feel the strings pull at just the right moments. You guide the relationship, and you control its flow. The more you understand their emotions, the more you can lead them to exactly where you want them to be.
This isn't a game of grand gestures. It's the small moments that matter. A look, a word, the timing of your affection. The magic lies in inconsistency. You can't always be available or predictable. One day, you might pull back just enough for them to feel the sting of your absence. The next, you might show up unexpectedly, reminding them of your power, of your allure, without saying a word. This creates an emotional push and pull that drives them to crave your attention, your presence, your approval. And that craving, that's the power you want to cultivate. Now, it's important to understand that emotional manipulation isn't about cruelty or malice. It's about control. It's about being the one who decides when to give affection and when to withhold it. This control makes them desire you, but only on your terms. Napoleon didn't simply love Josephine because of her beauty or charm. He saw the role she played in his political strategy, and he used their relationship as a way to solidify his control over France. He made her feel wanted, but only when it suited him. When she no longer served his purpose, he didn't hesitate to cast her aside. It wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he understood that relationships are ultimately about strategic alliances. Love, loyalty, and affection are all currencies in this grand game, and they are best spent when they maximize your power. So here's where we take this into actionable steps. To begin, you need to start controlling the narrative. Don't just let the relationship unfold naturally. From the very beginning, you must position yourself as a leader. You must create intrigue and mystery. When they start asking themselves, what's going on with them? Why don't they act like everyone else? That's when you've begun to win. This doesn't mean playing games for the sake of games. It means using your emotional presence strategically. Don't be afraid to be mysterious, to pull back when things start to get too comfortable. You're not trying to push them away. You're creating a dynamic where they feel a growing sense of desire and obsession. The more they pursue you, the more they feel like they're winning. But remember, you are always the one in control. Now, ask yourself, are you willing to be patient in this game? Are you willing to make them believe that their love is something that they have to work for, that they can't take for granted? This is where most people fail. They think they can get someone to fall in love with them through sheer emotion or vulnerability. But the truth is, people are more likely to fall for the idea of you, the version of you that you allow them to see. In the next section, we'll break down how to handle resistance, how to stay one step ahead of the other person, and most importantly, how to deal with obstacles that threaten your strategic game. Because in this battlefield, your greatest weapon is your ability to control your emotions and understand theirs. The challenge is constant. How do you keep your power while making them feel like they hold the key to your heart? We'll explore that next. Are you ready for the next level of mastery? As you begin to control the dynamics of the relationship, something inevitable happens: resistance. Just like in any battle, no strategy is perfect, and your opponent will start to push back. When they sense that something is off, when they realize they're not getting all of you, they will start to fight for more. The real question becomes, How do you maintain your advantage when the resistance intensifies? How do you stay one step ahead when the other person begins to push against your calculated emotional detachment? The first rule is this: never show desperation. If you allow yourself to react emotionally, you've lost. When they press, when they try to force you into a position of vulnerability, do not flinch. The moment you give in, the moment you let them think that they have the power to break you, you hand over control. And that's a weakness no strategist can afford. Napoleon knew this well. In the midst of his rise to power, he faced countless rebellions, betrayals, and challenges to his authority. Did he panic? Did he give in to the emotional outbursts of his generals or rivals? No. He crushed resistance with calculated precision. When faced with his enemies, he never let them see doubt or fear. He projected absolute confidence in his plans, even when things were spiraling out of control. This was his psychological edge. Control your emotions. Control the battlefield.
In relationships, this same principle applies. If they press for more, if they start demanding more of you emotionally, you must remain firm. It doesn't matter how much they want to draw you in. You cannot lose your footing. If you show desperation, if you give them what they want to make them stop pushing, you'll be left in a submissive position. You're the one who dictates the pace. When they push, you don't retreat. You simply pull back just enough to make them feel like they've won a small victory, but never give them the emotional closeness they seek. Take a moment to reflect on your own behavior when you feel resistance in a relationship. Do you give in quickly to end the tension, or do you stand firm? This is where most people falter. When the pressure mounts, they react. They fear that pulling back too much will make them seem distant or uncaring. But in reality, this is the tactic that fuels desire and power. The more you resist their emotional pull, the more they will chase after you. But of course, resistance can come in many forms. Maybe they become jealous or try to force a conversation about the future. This is a critical juncture. If you show them too much, if you give in to their demands for reassurance, you begin to relinquish the power you've worked so hard to cultivate. Your goal is to remain unpredictable, to keep them on their toes, never fully certain of where they stand with you. To illustrate this, let's look at Cleopatra. We've already talked about how Julius Caesar used her. But after his death, it was Mark Antony who found himself entranced by her. What made her such a powerful figure? It wasn't just her beauty or charm. It was the way she controlled the flow of affection. Cleopatra wasn't constantly available to Antony. She didn't simply pour affection on him at his every whim. Instead, she carefully controlled when and how she would grant him her favor, always keeping him at the edge of desire, always forcing him to prove his loyalty. She understood that to keep someone's interest, you must remain elusive and never surrender your emotional center. The same applies to you. When you begin to feel that pressure, that resistance, you must become the unmovable force. Don't give them what they expect, but rather keep them guessing. When they press for more, you pull back. When they want answers, you offer none. Create a sense of scarcity, not just in your presence, but in your emotions. When they sense that your attention and affection are valuable, they'll begin to compete for it, striving to meet your standard. This is where the real mastery comes into play. When the resistance feels like it's winning, that's when you take your power to the next level. While others react out of panic or fear of losing love, you will stand firm. The key to overcoming resistance is not about forcing the relationship into submission. It's about making them chase, making them want more, all while ensuring that you remain firmly in control. You never show them your vulnerability unless it serves your purpose, and when they finally get a glimpse, it's on your terms and at a price. Now let's talk about the final challenge. Walking away with the power and ensuring that the game ends in your favor, regardless of how they try to reclaim control. This is where the rubber meets the road. You've already manipulated emotions, built attachment, and maintained an unshakable position of power. But what happens when they begin to pull out all the stops to reel you back in? What happens when they sense they might lose you? What happens when they try to win you back? How do you keep your position of power while they scramble to get you to stay? This is the moment where your true mastery is tested. Most people buckle under the pressure. They give in, they get caught in the cycle of emotional highs and lows, and they end up in the same powerless position they started in. But not you. You are not like the others. This is where your ability to remain emotionally detached becomes paramount. The moment you show weakness, you lose. And weakness is desperation. If you start to react to their attempts to pull you back, you've given up all the ground you've gained. In essence, you've lost the game. So what do you do when they pull you into emotional chaos? When they try to turn the tables? You stand firm. You do not flinch. Remember, the battle is won not through reaction, but through calculated inaction. They will try everything. They will beg. They will plead. They might even manipulate your emotions, reminding you of the bond you shared or trying to invoke guilt. This is their final attack. They will make you feel like you're walking away from something real, something you've invested in. But here's the truth. None of it matters, because by now, you've already created the ultimate psychological tool, the idea of you. The longer you've held back your full emotional investment, the more they've built up an image of who you are in their mind. And that image, it's something they will fight to keep. It's the version of you that exists only in their imagination, not the reality. That's the version they've fallen for. So when you leave, you're not just walking away from them, you're walking away from the illusion they've constructed. Think about Julius Caesar. After his conquests, after all his power, when he was assassinated, it wasn't just his empire that was struck, it was the loss of the man himself. He was a symbol, a living legend. People didn't just mourn the ruler of Rome, they mourned the idea of Caesar. The same concept applies here. The emotional investment you've created in them is an image they can't easily let go of. When they try to win you back, you become the elusive prize, the unattainable figure. They will begin to see you as a conqueror they cannot conquer. And the more you resist their attempts, the more your power grows. By walking away when the stakes are highest, you turn the tables entirely. They will feel the loss, but they won't know how to get you back. This uncertainty, this scarcity, is your most potent weapon. Let's break this down with a simple analogy. Imagine a soldier who's been on the battlefield, winning every small skirmish, gaining ground. But as the war drags on, they begin to grow fatigued, disoriented by the prolonged conflict. The general, seeing this, withdraws strategically. The battle is left unfinished, but the soldier is left yearning, unsure of what comes next. This is what happens when you strategically pull back. You leave them emotionally exhausted, yearning for more, but never able to fully satisfy that need. The key to maintaining your power in this final phase is indifference. And that indifference is not born from a lack of care. It is a strategic detachment. It's the ability to look at the situation from above, like a general surveying a battlefield, understanding that what is at stake isn't just the relationship, but your control over it. This isn't about cruelty. This is about mastery of the psychological game. In the end, you've turned love into a chessboard, and now you've cornered them into a position where they are forced to fight for your attention, but never able to completely win. The longer you maintain your emotional distance, the more they will see you as an unattainable figure, a challenge they cannot conquer. The truth is, most people will never understand this level of control. They'll play by the rules of vulnerability and emotional attachment, never realizing they're handing over the reins to someone else. But you are different. You now see relationships not as something you fall into, but as something you command. And when you walk away not in defeat, but in victory. So here's your final challenge. Are you willing to stay detached when they pull every emotional string? Will you walk away from the relationship, knowing that your absence will make them yearn for you more than ever? It's not enough to simply play the game. You must master the game. The moment you make that decision, you will control the battlefield of love. The real question is, what will you do next? Will you continue to play by conventional rules, or will you become the strategist who bends love to their will? The answer is in your hands. This is the final test. Because as we speak, the battle is on. Your move.